All right, so thanks everyone for joining this session. Hope you're interested in learning how to build your first virtual assistant. So I'm Andrew Freed. I'm the author of Creating Virtual Assistants. This book is available on Manning.com and it's going to be published about September of this year. And I'm going to walk you through today a short demo, how to build your own virtual assistant. And if you've got questions along the way, I'd love to take them. I'll be consulting the chat every so often here. And I'll just give you a brief overview of what we're kind of going to walk through, and then we'll get right on to it. So we're going to build a virtual assistant to handle support inquiries for some retail store. So you can imagine that if you might call a store and you've got all sorts of questions for them, like how do I get to your store, or when are you open, or can I schedule an appointment? So we'll start very simply. We'll just do some basic question and answer, and then we'll expand that to give a little bit more dynamic responses. I'll show you how to do some process flows. Again, first we'll start very simply with a static process flow, and then we'll make it a bit more dynamic. And finally, I'll show you how we can escalate if the bot frequently doesn't understand the user, so that the user isn't trapped in a system that's not working well for them. So let's go. We're going to start here with Watson Assistant. So this is the platform I'm most familiar with. I do some demos of Watson Assistant in the book, and so we're gonna create the assistant right here during the session. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dialog skill, and I'll call this, let's say, creating virtual assistants Twitch demo, and that's all there is to it. So right now I've got a brand new skill, which is basically the scaffolding for my virtual assistant or for my chatbot. And right now it can't really do that much, right? Because I've just created a brand new empty skill. And the first thing I want to do is I want to understand what my users are saying. And so generally when a user is speaking to me, I want to figure out what's the intent. What are they really getting after? And a chatbot is trained by example. So we need intents, and we need examples for each of those intents. Now, luckily for me, there's some sample content that I can use, and I can add right to my assistant. And I'm going to add this customer care set. And so while that's being added, let's take a quick look at what that actually is. So I've got a handful of intents here, about 18 intents. And these are common things that people might want out of a customer care virtual assistant. So like I alluded to earlier, people might want to schedule appointments. They may want to figure out what's the best way to get in contact with you. They may want to find out, hey, when are you open, or where are you located, right? So this is a great set of intents that I can start with. And these are pre-trained. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see that for each of these, I have a bunch of examples. So if someone's going to ask for store hours, it may look like, are you open during Thanksgiving? Or are the stores open early? Or what time does your store open on Saturday? These are all examples of how somebody might ask for store hours. And my assistant is trained with these examples, and from them, it's going to recognize the intent. Now, the great thing about this training by example is, you can imagine there might be a million different ways that you could ask for store hours. But in fact, I'm only training it with a handful of examples. In this case, I'm training it with 20. And the assistant is going to learn from these 20 examples how to sort of infer or interpret the rest. So let's go ahead and give our assistant a little spin. So we're going to be making a lot of use out of this Watson Assistant testing interface. It's got a lot of cool features that I like, and I'm going to call them out to you. And while I'm demoing this, feel free to add in the chat if there's any questions you'd like me to try out on the assistant. Otherwise, I'll go with some of my own examples. So again, first thing, it's starting here, very basic greeting message. Hello, how can I help you? So let's try it out. Let's try, when do you close the store tonight? And it says, hey, that must be a customer care store hours request, right? And in fact, that's what it is, right? I was trying to figure out what are the hours for the store. And I can even see that, not only did it predict the store hours intent, but by using this little debugger tool, I can see it predicted it with pretty high confidence. So not only did it know the right answer, but it was very sure that it got the right answer. That's good news for me, and we can go into that more a little bit later. Oh, we'll see also that right now the assistant, even though it's identifying the intent, it's saying, hey, I didn't understand you. And that's because we haven't coded it to actually give a proper response to store hours. But while we're doing that, why don't we test out some other questions, such as how, let's say, where is the nearest store? And so it says, hey, that's a store location question. Again, very, very high confidence. It's pretty sure that that's what it is. I could ask other questions like, I need to set up an appointment. And that's an appointments intent. Again, very high confidence. Or I'd like to apply for a job. Employment inquiry. So we can see here that the assistant is very good at identifying the intent right out of the gate, just because of that sample data that I uploaded at the very beginning. But it's a little unsatisfying that it's not answering these questions very well. So let's configure the assistant to start responding a little bit more helpfully. So let's take a couple of these intents and provide an answer. So the first one we're going to do is store hours. We'll say if the assistant recognizes customer care store hours, we'll say our stores are open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Very simple response. Let's do another one here. So we'll do another one for store location. Say customer care store location. I'll say we have stores at 123 Maple Street and 456 Elm Drive. All right, so very simple to configure simple question and answer responses. So let's give it a shot here. See if the assistant does any better. So I'm going to clear my testing screen and start asking some new questions. And I'll say again, what time do you open tomorrow? Okay, so it again recognized this as a customer care store hours, which is great. Very high confidence. And it also said our stores are open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. So perfect. It's going through our dialog. The other thing I like out of this testing interface is that I can use this little tracer icon to figure out where and why I'm going through the conversation. So when I click on this here, it's going to tell me, hey, this blue box represents the node that I used to satisfy this conversation. So it's a nice sanity check that, yes, it was a store hours question, and I, in fact, did go to the store hours response. So let's try another one here. Where are you located? So again, customer care store location, and it says we have stores at 123 Maple Street and 456 Elm Drive. Looks like I got a typo there. Why don't we go ahead and fix that? So we have stores at that location. But as far as a simple question answer response, that's all there is to it. So let's make this a little bit more interesting. We've said that, hey, there are in fact two different stores. There's the Maple store and the Elm store. And if I ask a question specifically about one of those stores, I'd really like to get a response just for that store. It doesn't make sense to tell me about the Maple store if I'm going to Elm, or vice versa. So we can test out what would happen here. We say, where is the Elm store located? So right now, I'm going to get an answer about both of the stores. And let's say that's a little bit unfriendly. Again, the person asking the question was pretty specific, and we gave kind of a generic answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called entities. And the entities are going to help us recognize the different stores that we're talking about. So I'm going to create an entity here called store location. And I'm going to create within this store location, I'm going to include values for each of the stores I'm interested in. So the first one is for Elm, and I'm going to do a couple synonyms for it as well. I'm going to do Elm, Elm Drive, and I'll do Elm itself. Excuse me. And for Maple, I'll do the same thing. So Maple was Maple Street. We'll do Maple, the short version, and Maple lowercase. And while I'm adding that, I'll call out this neat feature here called fuzzy matching. Fuzzy matching is going to help us identify these stores even if we get them spelled wrong, which I think is a pretty cool feature as well. So we can see right now Watson is training. Watson is training because I've updated the training data. Anytime I update the intents or the entities, Watson's going to automatically retrain itself. But we've got some work to do while it's retraining anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new store hours response, and we're going to be paying attention to whether or not a specific store is located. So we'll do first here store hours. This is, we'll call it generic. Actually, we'll just call this, we'll leave it as store hours. I'm going to do customer care store hours. And we're going to give it some child nodes. So the first is going to be Elm. So if the assistant recognizes store hours and it recognizes Elm, we're going to say our Elm location is at 456 Elm Drive. We'll do another one for Maple. And I'm labeling each of my dialog nodes. This is just a handy way for me to keep track of them and to see what I'm specifically doing in these. It's sort of like a comment field. So for the Maple store, I'll say our Maple store is at 123 Maple Street. I can use my generic response, and I'm going to move it into the same tree. So I've got my generic response of, oh my goodness, I've been doing the wrong one the whole time. All right, we will fix that. We'll move this as a child to store location. We'll move this below. And let's see, this one here. I'm going to delete it all together. Oh, maybe I won't do that. I'm going to move store hours below. That's the one I want to keep. This is the one I want to remove. Actually, we'll just call the store location now. So, all right, perfect. And I'm going to move this as a child. There we go. Move this as a child of this guy. And this one, the generic one, we're going to move as a child. So we're going to move it to below there. Okay, perfect. So this is my parent. And I'm not going to respond but instead I'm going to look at my child nodes. So what I've done here is when it comes in and we recognize a store location request, we're going to check the children, if any of the children nodes are true, first of all. So if it's store location and it's about Elm, we're going to give the specific Elm response. If it's store location in Maple, we're going to give the Maple response. And if it's neither of those existing stores, we're going to give the generic response. So let's go ahead and test that. So I'm going to say, where is the Elm store located? And it says, hey, it's located at 456 Elm Street. I can use my tracer and figure out that, hey, it went through both of these two nodes. Great. I can say, where is the Maple store? And I'm intentionally misspelling it. So it recognized, hey, you probably wanted Maple. That's close enough with the fuzzy matching. And sure enough, our Maple store is at 123 Maple Street. And I can ask generically, where is the store nearest me? And it's going to say, it's going to give me the generic response. I have stores at 123 Maple and 456 Elm. So this shows how I can give a bit more of a dynamic response. So far I've just shown very simple Q&A, question and answer. So I'd like to change gears a little bit and show a process flow. So we're going to implement a reset password process flow. And this reset password flow is going to have 3 different steps. I'm going to have to ask for the user ID. I'm going to ask for the date of birth, and I'm going to ask for a security question so that I can confirm the user's information before I go ahead and reset the password, because I don't just want to reset a password arbitrarily. So we're going to have to do a couple things here. So the first thing is we're going to add a node for password reset start. And we're going to call this customer care reset password. No, that's not the name, sorry. Profile password. All right. I can reset your password. What's your user ID? Okay, so we need to handle this question, we need to understand what a user ID looks like. And I've got a pattern set for this. So we're going to say that user IDs are alphanumeric strings, and there's a specific pattern to them. Specifically, a user ID is going to be a number of letters first, followed by numbers. So it's going to be 4 to 12 letters, followed by 1 to 3 numbers. And this is a regular expression. I always struggle with regular expressions, so I wrote this one before I got started, so I could come back to this. So this is going to help us recognize a user ID. So any string that matches this pattern, we're going to assume is in the valid user ID format. I also need to recognize a date, right, for a date of birth. So luckily for me, there's a handful of entities that are built into Watson Assistant. The first of those that we're going to use right now is for date, and we're going to use that for detecting the date of birth. And then the third thing we're going to detect is the answer to the user security question. We'll do that a little bit differently, and I'll show you that in just a second. Again, you can also see that Watson is training because we're adding entities to the system. No problem for us. We've got a little bit of dialogue work to do anyway. So we've started this password reset flow by saying we need to recognize the intent of someone who wants to reset their password. We followed that up with a question to the user, what's their user ID? So let's add a child node to handle the response to this. So I'll call this password reset check user ID. And we're going to say if the system recognizes a valid user ID format, we're going to go on and ask them for their date of birth. What is your date of birth? All right, so this is now the second step in our process flow. We've after we started by saying we could reset the password and we need the user ID, now we're going to ask for the date of birth. So add another child node here, password reset date of birth, and I'm going to detect any date here. I'm going to take as a date of birth. Now we are doing a shorthand here. The assistant is only checking the formatting of these things. If I was building a real assistant, I would probably go to some backend system and verify not just that I've hit the right format, but that it's in fact the right answer. But for the sake of doing this fairly quickly, we'll just make sure that the format is correct. So if somebody gives me a date, I'm going to say, okay, one more question. And this is going to be their security question. What is your favorite book? All right. So you may have guessed we're going to do one more node to handle the security question. So we'll do that with a child node, password reset security question. And here I'm just going to check if the user entered the title creating virtual assistants as their security question. Will say I will reset your password now. You will get a notification within 5 minutes on how to log in with the new password. All right. So let's go ahead and test this. So we say, I forgot my password. And it says, no problem. What's your user ID? And I'm going to say it's afreed123. And we can see here that it noted that it's a valid user ID. And what's another cool thing is that it ignored this opening, where I typed in its. It recognized that only this part here, this afreed123, matched the pattern, and it considered that the user ID. And we can see that the conversation has in fact moved on. It's asking the date of birth, and I'll fill that in just a second. We also see something interesting from the testing interface. It's saying, hey, there's no intent here, and it's telling us this is irrelevant. The good news is we can ignore the intent classifier here. We're not using it in any way. Our dialog is only using entities at this point. So the fact that the intent classifier didn't find anything is no bother to us. We did in fact find the right entity, so we're able to move on. So it's asking me now, what's your date of birth? I'm going to say again, it's, let's call it 12/25/1900. And okay, again, it says it's irrelevant, but it recognizes that it's in fact a date. And now it's asking me that one more question. It's asking me for my security question, and I'll answer that this is in fact my favorite book. And it's telling me I'll reset your password. You'll get a notification in a couple minutes how to log in with that password. And every step of the way, I could verify with this testing tool, where I am in the dialog, just in case something has gone wrong. I can use this to kind of figure out, what I've gone through and why. All right, so this is a fairly static process flow. I had 3 questions that I wanted to ask, and I wanted to ask them in a very specific order. I didn't want to ask these things all at one time. I didn't want to ask someone their security question if they didn't even know their user ID. So let's do a slightly different process flow. Let's do one that's a bit more dynamic. So we're going to do scheduling an appointment. So if you imagine scheduling an appointment, there's basically 3 things I need before I can schedule an appointment with you. I need to know where the appointment's going to be. I need to know what day it's going to be, and I need to know what time. So I've got 3 things that I need to get from you. And it kind of doesn't matter what order I get them in, as long as I get all 3 of those things. So we're going to do this in a different way. We're going to use a capability called slots. Slots is one of my favorite things to demo. And we're going to create a node for appointments. And we're going to start this by using the appointments intent. And I'm going to have to enable something clever to do this. So I'm going to use functionality called slots. And we'll all walk through what this means, what this lets me do. But as soon as I configure this, you see we're looking at a very different dialog here. So it's asking me to define what slots I need and what questions are going to help fill the slots. And so our slots, again, they are that location, that date, and that time. So let's start with the first thing I need is the store location. And any store will do. I'm going to save it in the conversation as store location so I can get to it later. And if it's not present, I'm going to ask, hey, where do you want this appointment? I'm going to need another one for the date. So I'm going to do sysdate. And if I don't have that, I'm going to ask, what day would you like to come in? And I also need the time. So let me go back to my entities view and let me enable the entity for time. So again, there's one built in. I don't have to build a time parser, which is great news for me. So I'm going to go back to my, where did it go? I didn't mean to put it as a child node. So I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it below. Perfect. All right, I'm going to add a slot for time. So I'm going to do sys time. I'm going to save it as time, and if they don't tell me what time, I'm going to ask them what time of day works best. And so these are the questions it's going to ask. It's only going to ask whatever questions it needs. It's going to start this process flow based on someone asking for an appointment. And I need to configure a response for when I've actually built this, when I've got the information I need. So I pre-canned this one as well, just so I wouldn't get the syntax wrong. And so I'm going to say, great, we set your appointment. And I'm going to say where we set it for, what day we set it for, and what time we set it for. So let's give this thing a shot. Let's say I need to make an appointment. And when I say this, I'm not filling in any slots, so I expect it to ask me for everything. It's going to say, where do you want the appointment? I want it at Elm. What day would you like to come in? Tomorrow is best. And what time of day works best? I'm going to do 10 a.m. So it's going to set my appointment at Elm for the 28th at 10 o'clock. I could have done this a little bit differently. Let's say I need to make an appointment. Where do you want to make it? We'll make it a Maple this time. Let's say Tuesday, 9 p.m. And it's saying, great, I got all the information I needed. I didn't need to ask 2 questions because you gave me a little bit of extra information. And in fact, I set it for Tuesday at 9 o'clock p.m. I can do this one other different way. And say, I would like to make an appointment at Maple for, let's say, 5 p.m. on Wednesday. And you can see here, I filled in all 3 slots. It found the store location, it found the time, it found the date, and it didn't need to ask me any follow-up questions. It set my appointment for me at the Maple store Wednesday at 5 p.m. So this is a cool way to do a dynamic process flow if the order of the questions isn't really that important, and if it's okay that users might offer you some information that you can detect at any time. Then slots is kind of a pretty cool way to do that. So let's do one more dynamic example. And let's go back to that store hours. So earlier we said, hey, the stores are open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, but I actually kind of hope that's not true, right? I hope they take a couple holidays off. So let's imagine that our store chain here, they have different hours for some of the holidays. So Thanksgiving, they're going to have very different hours. Maybe Christmas, they're closed. And maybe every other holiday, they're actually open at the regular time. So let's try to create some dialogue that answers that store hours location, but that store hours question, but it answers it in a way that's respectful of whether or not the user was asking about some holidays. So we're going to go back to our entities area. We're going to define an entity called holiday. And let's create a couple here. So we're going to create Thanksgiving. We're going to create Christmas. Because we know we have special hours we want to do for those. But, you know, there are a lot of holidays. And if we're giving kind of a generic response for the other holidays, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to list every single holiday here? But what if we could train the assistant so that it recognized what a holiday question kind of looked like, so that we didn't have to list every single one of them here. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. Pretty again, it's kind of a fun thing for me to show. So we're going to go here into the store hours, and I've got lots of existing questions here, but not too many of them are specifically talking about holidays. So I'm going to change my examples so that I've got a couple more examples of what questions with holidays in them look like. So first, we're going to say, are the stores open early on Christmas? I'm going to ask, at what hour can I swing by on 4th of July? Can you tell me how late the stores are open till on President's Day? And how early do you open on summer solstice? And how long are you open on Halloween? Okay, that's probably enough examples. So I'm going to do a thing here called annotating entities. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the assistant where holidays often show up in questions. So every time I see a holiday here, I'm going to mark it and say that it's a holiday. So Christmas, it's a holiday. Thanksgiving, it's a holiday. Bank holidays, we'll consider that a holiday. 4th of July is 3 words. So I'm going to highlight all of them, consider them a holiday. President's Day is a pair holiday. Summer solstice and Halloween. And I actually want to add one more example here just to get a little bit different syntax. I wanted to know that holidays can sometimes come first in the example. So where did my Valentine's example go? So I'm going to mark this one as a holiday also. So again, Watson Assistant is training because I've changed the intents, I've changed the entities. Again, that's not a big problem because we've got some dialogue work to do. So I am going to add a child node here, and we'll say Thanksgiving hours. So if I recognize the holiday of Thanksgiving, I'm going to say we are open, let's see, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Let's do one for Christmas. And let's say they're going to be closed on Christmas. I hope they get a break eventually. We are closed on Christmas. Maybe not an exclamation point. Okay, Christmas hours. And let's see, we want to do another node for holiday hours, generic. So I'm going to say if I recognize a holiday and it wasn't one of the others, it wasn't Thanksgiving or Christmas, I'm going to use a special response here. And I'm going to say here, our regular hours will be in effect, but I'm going to play back to the caller what holiday they actually said. All right, so I'm going to let them know I understood. They were asking about a holiday. I'm going to tell them the hours are still in effect, whatever holiday it was, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And we're going to add one more here, node below. This is generic hours. I'm going to mark this one as true because if we get to here, we already know it was a customer care store hours and there was no specific holiday. So I'm going to grab this text and remove that response because at the parent, I don't need to respond. And I'm going to use the response here. So, to walk through what we've done, we have a generic node for store hours detecting. When we see a store hours request, we won't respond right away to it, but we're going to look at our children. We're going to see first if it's Thanksgiving, second if it's Christmas, third if it's a holiday, and again, we haven't listed all of the holidays. And then lastly, we'll do a generic response. So when do you close on Thanksgiving? I didn't even spell it close, but I'm going to handle the spell check will handle it for me. And it says, hey, we're open 8 to 4 on Thanksgiving. Store hours on Christmas. I'm going to say we're closed on Christmas. When are you open on Arbor Day? Now, Arbor Day is not a holiday that we specifically trained it on, but contextually it understood that, hey, we talk about holidays in this kind of spot. Holidays look like this. So it detected, hey, it was in fact Arbor Day. And we're going to tell the user, hey, our regular hours are in effect on Arbor Day. That's exactly what you said. And we're going to tell you what the hours are. And then we say, when do you close? Do one more here. So for this one here, there was no holiday. So we're just going to say, hey, our stores are open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Let's see if we can get this bot a little bit confused. So I'm going to say, hey, tell me a joke. And it says, I have no idea what to do with that. I didn't understand. You can try rephrasing. Well, I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to ask this thing again. And it's telling me, hey, I don't understand you. Can you please reword your statement? I can do this a whole bunch more times. And we can see that the assistant is kind of cycling through all these different responses, and neither one of us is kind of getting anywhere. So this is kind of unsatisfying for the user if there's, the assistant continually is not understanding them, not really giving them a different response. We're kind of stuck. So what I'd like to do is implement here something I call a 3 strikes rule. And the 3 strikes rule comes from baseball, where 3 strikes and you're out. If the assistant doesn't understand the user 3 times, we're going to tell the user, look, we're sorry, this isn't working out. How about you call our customer service, and let's get you to a person and see if the person can handle this. So we're going to be changing this node here a little bit. This is our catch-all node. This is the one that's triggered any time that the user is not understood. And you can see here that it's just going to cycle through this responses. It's got 3 different responses. It's going to respond sequentially. And we kind of saw it do that on the right-hand side. But it's not really keeping track of how often this is happening. So we're going to change the assistant so that it keeps track of how many times it's misunderstanding the user. So what we're going to start with is at our welcome node, we're going to create a variable, and we're going to call this misunderstood count. And I'll initialize to 0. And what we're going to do with this misunderstood count is every time we don't understand the user, we're going to increment this. And based on how many times we've misunderstood the user, if it's less than 3, we're going to give them that kind of "I didn't understand you, please restate" kind of response. And after 3 misunderstandings, we're going to take them back to, "Hey, this isn't working. How about you give us a call?" So we're going to do a new anything else node that keeps track of the misunderstandings. And it's going to be triggered on anything else. So anything else is just a default condition built into Watson Assistant. If nothing else is true, then anything else is true. So for us practically, if someone's not asking a question about appointments, profiles, store hours, or store locations, it's going to be treated as a misunderstanding. And so we're not going to respond, but we're going to set the misunderstood count. We're going to do an increment here. And this is using a little bit of scripting language built into Watson Assistant, but essentially we've just got an incrementer here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check how many times we're going to keep track of how many times we've misunderstood them. And let's create a child node for the 3 strikes. 3 strikes. And we're gonna consider this misunderstood count greater than or equal to 3. And we're gonna say I'm sorry, I keep misunderstanding you. Please call customer support at 1-888-555-HELP. And I'm going to use this node, our previous one, if the misunderstood count is less than 3. Right. So if it was less than 3, I'm going to give this kind of generic response. And if it's greater than or equal to 3, I'm going to tell them, please call support. And on my parent here, I'm not going to respond at all, but I'm going to check my children nodes. So I'm going to clear this conversation. Tell me a joke. Huh? I don't like that. All right, and so we can see here, the first 2 times we misunderstood, I went to my node where I was less than 3 strikes, and on my 3rd misunderstanding, I got the escalation node. Right, I'm sorry, I keep misunderstanding you. Please call customer support at this number. Right, so this is a very nice thing to do for your users. If the assistant just is not connecting with the user, we want to give them an escape route. So we've built one here with this 3 strikes rule. I've also seen it done with 2 strikes. It's a very common pattern. So instead of using the 3 here, I could have used the 2. But it's a good thing to do to let your assistant, to let your users get out if they're having a bad experience. Right. So this is all the content I was planning on sharing with this group. So I thank you very much for your time. I'd like to offer something to you here at the end. So the book is available on manning.com. There's a special link here. This http://mng.bz/y upper M lower M. This is a direct short link to the book. And if you use this code TWITFREE40, you get 40% off the book, all forms of it. So TWITFREE40. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found it informative. Please leave me a comment. You can leave a comment on the book. You can send a comment on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm Andrew R. Freed on both of those platforms. I'd love to hear from you here and hear what you think of the book. But I thank you so much for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care, everyone.